name is Brent here on Cloudy or the Chance of Meeples. Today on the channel, we're going to be doing something brand new. I had something pop into my head a little while ago, and I've been running with this, and I had an idea, and it just ran with that. And over the last couple of years, of course, we've all been, dealing with the craziness of the world, and the word community has been like ringing loud and clear again and again and again. Community. And it made me think that community is built on our community is built on conversations, much like games are built on ideas. So this whole segment is going to be called Ideas, and we're going to be chatting with game designers about ideas. And this is the first one, and I am so pumped to have a very special guest of Paul Salomon. He is the designer of a few games. Most notably to myself is Honeybuzz right there. So thanks for joining me this evening there, Paul.
Yeah, hey Brent. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
No, this is fantastic. I'm just thrilled to just chat about board games. My wife is like, you talk about these things all the time. Talk to other people, please. And so that's when I started the channel. And then it's just grown since beginning, I guess, of 2021. And we all have ideas, and sometimes ideas get fleshed out and something comes up out of them. And sometimes they just stick as ideas. So
Yeah, that's for sure. That's very true.
So I want to talk about games in general. So what is kind of your story? Not story, but like kind of your history in board gaming.
Yeah. I as you know, as a kid I played board games, but that's a very different type of thing.
Mhm.
Um my background is like math and mathematical art, and I'm a math teacher. And so I think a lot of the like habits of math are kind of in some of those things, or
Right.
the habits of gaming, I mean. But when I really started going with gaming was like probably 10 years ago. I had a teacher friend that invited me over for a game night. Previously, I was like into poker and things like that.
Mhm.
But we played Ticket to Ride, and the some of the ideas like you're talking about really impressed me. And like I think that's the thing that keeps me tied to game design and even just playing games is like all of the ideas that people have, the new
Mm.
mechanisms and the way that that ties to theme and stuff. So Ticket to Ride was kind of my first, and then also diplomacy. We had my math department in Brooklyn. We played a big game of diplomacy for like the whole year, and it got.
Hmm.
Have you ever played diplomacy?
I haven't. I have friends in my game group that have,
Yeah,
but I personally have not.
right. And maybe they're still friends, maybe they're not, because
Yeah.
it gets a little nasty. I remember at one point we were playing this game, and my buddy Max, we had him go out in the hall so that we could have like a private talk,
Right.
and he left his computer to record our conversation.
Oh
And it was like
man.
such a betrayal of trust.
Yeah.
That sort of like gives you a sense of what the diplomacy was like. Um, but so that I played a lot of Ticket to Ride, and I played a lot of diplomacy online for a while. And then once I came to St. Louis, which is
Okay.
where I am now, where I'm
Hmm.
from, another colleague was like, "Hey, we should play a couple games," and he started teaching me Dominion, which like blew my brain open to the
Yeah.
idea of deck building. I had played Magic as a kid, but wasn't really into it in any kind of a serious way. And the ideas in Dominion I just thought were so cool, and I really ran with that. And that got me. After that, I started tinkering with design and stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Would you say that being like a you said you're a math teacher?
Yeah,
Do you just sit there and have a hard time, like not just struggling, but like, okay, if I do this, I get this amount. If I do this, like I guess AP would be the thing.
right.
Like, do you just like,
Yeah, I find that I'm not usually very AP prone.
okay,
I think partly that is because it's not too hard for me to do the math. You know what I
right?
mean? It's not too hard to figure to make some assessments, but also because I just don't. The thing I hate most in any game is like really bad game flow and like
Mm,
choppy turns and sitting there, and I don't like playing with people that are that way. So I just try to shoot from the hip a little bit, keep it moving.
yeah, yeah. Well, so what kind of keeps you in the hobby? You said you love just like designing and like fleshing out ideas and creating, but what keeps you in the hobby of like I'm gonna keep going to play games because
Yeah. For me, I mean, the thing I love about games, one of the many things, is I like that it gives you like a structured way to have social interactions. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like I'm a pretty introverted person. I can be very gregarious and sort of like, successful at conventions, meeting strangers, but I also feel uncomfortable sometimes when there's like unclear expectations of how you're supposed to act or how long the thing's supposed to go. Like if I people from high school, if they're like, yeah, we should get together, let's go to a bar and have some drinks and talk, like that would be
mhm,
the least appealing, most
mm,
anxious interaction for me. Whereas, if we get together and play a game, I know about how long it's going to be, I know when it's my turn to talk, I know
mm,
what the
yep.
rules are, what can expect from people. So I think that's part of it. And then, I also at this point have my weekly game group, and it's just three of us, but it's like those are my best gaming buds. We get together every Monday, we play games, and I like seeing what's new. And I got accused this weekend of being a very cult of the new guy, which I'm not sure is really true, but I do really like um, seeing what people come up with. Ideas that feel fresh are really exciting to me, and when you can find something that's like fresh and thematic and elegant, it really just like tickles my brain aesthetic or whatever it
Mhm.
is that I like to kind of think about.
Nice. So, what is new for you as of recording this end of June 2022?
Well, last weekend I was at, or not even last weekend, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, I was at the Gamers Ranch, which you probably have never heard of, I would think.
Okay.
But this is kind of a resort in Missouri, about 2 hours from St. Louis, for gamers. They have kind of a lodge that sleeps 20 plus and 2,200 board games
Oh
there,
man.
and pool and VR and pinball machines and an 18-hole disc golf course and a lake and all kinds of stuff. So I was up
Wow.
there with a bunch of designers and game industry people and just friends from St. Louis. So we played some stuff. I'll tell you some new stuff that I played. Longboard from Reiner
Reiner
Knizia
Knizia.
from
Mm,
25th Century Games.
yep.
I picked that up at Origins, and I think that's pretty nice. I'm surprised at how much I like it.
Hmm.
It's a lot like Lost Cities, which I sort of mentioned that I was one of those first games that I had played,
Yep.
and I think I like it more.
Okay.
Um, it's one of those Knizia things that's kind of like it's abstract. It's not really themed, but the gameplay is pretty good.
Good.
So that was fun. I played Foundations of Rome, which is like a very rare, expensive minis based purchase for me. I'm usually not at all allured by minis, and I don't even think that it's the minis in this game that I like. Emerson Matsuchi is such a good designer. But we played that, and then mostly I played games I had played before. I think
Hmm.
Seikatsu and Priests of Ra, which is an awesome variation on Ra. But I don't know what else I played that was new. Possibly nothing.
Okay. Foundations of Rome, of course, everybody's talking about it now. And I keep seeing this and I'm like, man, I'm not a fan of mini, or I shouldn't say I'm not a fan. Like, kind of like yourself, I don't buy games for miniatures.
Right.
I have very few games with miniature components. But seeing that and just, yeah, Emerson is just an unbelievable designer. Like, I love this, where you can see it. Yeah, the century behind me.
Yep.
Like, how like it's such a simple thing, but yet three games came out from the same idea,
Right.
and they're all different in their own way. Like one is kind of spatial and worker placement, and then you have the whole conveyor belt system. But how you can just then mix them, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
like for you being a game designer, does that kind of even blow your mind?
Oh, for sure.
Because the
Yeah.
time you spend to put one box, like one game in one box, let alone to have three games that can all be compatible in one like
Exactly. Yeah.
giant game, or however you want to mix and match, like that's just fantastic to me. And so yeah, Foundations of Rome, it's on my list. It's a pretty penny to pay, let's just say
It is.
that.
I think it's a really good game. It's a lot like New York 1901, which
Mm,
I don't know if you've ever played it, but that is on my top 100. I haven't played it in a while, but it's very, like Ticket to Ride, it's very elegant and streamlined and feel good turns and stuff. And Foundations of Rome does a lot of those same things, but better and at
Hmm,
more of a kind of medium minus weight, depending on what kind of expansions and stuff you have in there.
right,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see if they're gonna do like a punch board edition, even
right.
if they did just like a dual or triple layered punch board edition that could still look really cool. They could cut the price point, in half or in a third or a quarter. And I, I was really surprised. They had 70 copies at Origins, and
Yeah.
I don't think they sold out, which blew me away. That I thought for sure that would be like first day gone, but I think that they may have found the boundaries of what people will pay sometimes for some of these things.
Yeah, I to be honest, I was looking even yesterday and I was like, Arcane Wonders, I believe.
Yep.
Again, at the time recording this, there were still a few copies left, and I'm like, shipping to Canada is just like
Yeah.
so much. So it would come in the like $400 range for me, like that'd be Canadian, of course, but
Right. Right.
yeah, that's a big chunk of change,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So,
That's about yeah.
but
This
it's
is like
definitely on my list to play.
yeah.
So, what would you say it would be your favorite game? Sticking on, the gaming of what you enjoy playing.
This is it right here.
Star Realms.
Star Realms, and it's not my favorite type of game,
Okay.
and it's not the type of game that I design either, and it's not. Um, there's so many things about it that make it an outlier, but Star Realms is an amazing, amazing, amazing game, and I've played at this point about 13,000 games on the app. Um, yeah, at one point I was in the top 100 lifetime on the app, and so many friends in that community, and the stuff that goes on Facebook and on Discord and BGG with that. It's just like really creative, nonstop tournaments and leagues and stuff, and it's a really challenging game to play. It's a lot like baseball. I don't know if you're like Canadian to the extent of baseball is irrelevant to you, but
I am like
oh, I see
diehard.
you got a baseball
I'm wearing
hat
a brand new baseball hat.
there.
I
Okay,
have a super nerdy shirt that you might get. 6 + 4 + 3 = 2.
6 + 4 + 3 = 2.
Like, I
What
love
is it? Show me that
baseball.
shirt. What is that shirt?
It's a baseballism shirt. Virtually everything I wear is baseballism.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's awesome.
my background. Oh, I'm backwards. 6 + 4 + 3. Think of baseball terms. I don't even know if you'll get it.
I don't know if I will, but we'll come back to it.
I'll tell you at the end.
Okay,
And
tell
if
me.
I don't, remind me.
Yeah, I'm
Remind
thinking
me.
on it, but I can't just sit here and think.
No, that's
Um,
fine.
so Star Realms is like baseball in that it's this game of inches where it's
Hmm.
like in baseball, if you reach base 4 out of 10 times,
You're the
you're
best
doing an
player.
amazing job, right?
Yeah.
And there are limits to how good you can get at baseball. No team can go undefeated,
Yep.
and the best Star Realms player in the world can maybe win 75% of their games.
Hmm.
So it stays kind of competitive for everybody. And then there's like this logarithmic scale of how much more time and effort you have to put into like eking out another 2% on your lifetime win rate. And the situations are just really, you have to study them at a small level, and it's a ton of fun.
To be honest, I've only played Star Realms one time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a number of years ago, and I enjoyed it. But again, that was kind of when I was just getting
Right.
into the hobby,
Right.
and with the amount of games that are there, sometimes these older games, they just, like you said, they're an outlier. They just don't hit the table unless you're, I don't know, like kind of been in it for a while and you get wind of it early, because again, there's just so many games all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but speaking of, games, you designing Honey Buzz, I want to move forward in that a little bit and kind of talk about the idea of Honey Buzz. Maybe let's condense this a bit. Like, how long have you been working on it, or how long since the beginning of Honey Buzz, since the idea came for Honey
Yeah.
Buzz, and how did you build this game? Did you build it from like theme, say I want to do things with bees, and like they're going to do this and this and this, or did it start with something of like, this is the mechanic, this would be really cool, hey, let's put and incorporate the theme of bees into this?
Yep.
How did that go?
So I know that we signed Honeybuzz in I think 2017,
Okay.
um, and I think I spent at least a year or two kind of pitching it before then. So it must have started in like 2015 at this point was when I
Hmm.
kind of really started going in it. And it started with I designed a game called Jump Drive, which is not the Jump Drive that is in market, but it was kind of a deck building like FTL if you've ever played that PC game, spaceship thing, bounty hunting thing, and it wasn't very good. And then the next thing was like in my work as a mathematician and as a mathematical artist, I did a lot of work with tessellations and tiles, and tile laying is one of my favorite styles of games. So I wanted to kind of bring my knowledge in to see like if I could come up with a new idea, basically something
Right.
that I hadn't seen before. And so I knew that if I took basically these rhombus tiles that were double equilateral triangles, that there would be lots of different ways you could connect them together. You could put six in a corner, or you could put five in a corner, or four in a corner, two different ways, or three in a corner.
Hmm.
And so the idea originally was just like, I'll use those rhombuses, and then the shape that you make at the corner will determine something like a type of a resource or a type of building or something. And then I was going to have tiles that just kind of sit on top of that. And I was like, well, if you do this thing called truncation in math and kind of cut those corners out, they could be hexagons. And
Hmm.
so um, then you had basically two hexagons on each tile, and they would make hexagon spaces. And so the the B theme was kind of like, as soon as I had that mechanism,
Right.
it was a bee game. And then everything after that was from doing research about bees, and like there were a lot of really accurate science things that were in the game that didn't make it ultimately, about like laying an unfertilized egg to make a drone, and then laying a fertilized egg to lay a worker, which is female, or like there was even stuff where you're like mating with other people's drones. It was like a whole crazy thing, which is, we're lucky that we lost all of that. Yeah, but then a lot of it is just from that. A lot of the mechanisms of how you produce the honey and stuff is accurate, and then from there, kind of my mathematical sense. I like to, in the math art that I do and in the board game design stuff, it's like a balance between what the math tells you it should be, or
Hmm.
what math tells you is going to work, and what also makes sense or makes it feel right or makes it pretty. And so all the development kind of goes in that direction.
That's fantastic. And speaking of pretty, this game is one of the nicest games that I've ever played.
Yeah.
Like, components are unbelievable. You got the little squishy,
Yeah.
yeah, squishy honey, and I've upgraded mine to. Sadly, I don't even have the deluxe components, so I would love to get those
Yeah.
the thicker acrylic tiles and whatnot. But the coins, I have the wooden coin set, which I just think that just elevates it even more, and the artwork and just everything about the look of this game is just so captivating. And the team at Elf Creek Games just had a grand slam on that one.
I
Did
could not
you
have been any happier to have signed with them or work with them. It's been a dream all along.
when you got that first production copy, or even kind of started seeing the production copies, were you kind of like, take that step back and be like, wow, like this is something that I came up with, or this is something that like was it a little surreal to
Oh,
see all that, especially with all the artwork and everything?
yeah, like every time that Anne would send us new art of like even just sketches that aren't colored,
Mhm.
of like this is what the art's going to look like for the cards or for the board and stuff, it was like mind blowing. And the first time that I went to, it might have been PAX Unplugged, or maybe it was Origins my first year, and we had my homemade prototype, and then just like pieces of paper with printed out black and white sketches from Anne, and it still just was starting to grab people's attention.
Hmm.
The moment for me that was like really kind of surreal was the day that they brought like multiple big boxes of games to my house, and I was
Hmm.
able to open all that stuff up and see it. I mean, that was, it was obviously a long road getting to that point, and so it was pretty amazing. But even just in May at Geekway to the West, which is the St. Louis's big game convention,
Yep.
it was in the Play to Win library, and so there were just constantly people having it out on tables, like in my hometown. I have former students that tell me that they work with somebody now who knows the game and loves the game, and it's just kind of, and even there's people in Germany and the Netherlands and France that play the game, and so it is really surprising and wild and hard to believe sometimes.
Was it kind of cool seeing like your students? Like, did you not involve your students in this, but like, you're teaching math and you're saying like, hey, this is a prototype. Did you ever like throw it on the table and be like, play this, see what happens, tell me your thoughts, what could be better, like just learn from each other in that way?
Yeah. Well, we're actually in my classroom right now, so this is my board games behind me in the classroom. So they know that that's what I work on, and a lot of the play testing I do with students.
Hmm.
Just even when I do development work for other companies or other games and stuff, they like games. I like to share games with them, but the and I think some of them are in the rule book as play testers.
Okay.
The Beeple design was actually done by a student who was an eighth grader at the time, uh,
Wow.
and for the prototype, which I 3D printed, but the end result is basically the exact same model.
Wow. That's fantastic. You said you did a lot of like, sciencey, maybe not science. Sciencey is not a word, but like just real life things in the game. Did you design when you designed that? Were you like, hey, I'm gonna have a spatial element and I'm gonna mix worker placement and then I'm gonna have like memory slash deduction, and I'm gonna have contract fulfillment, and then an open market. Like
Right.
there's a lot going on in the game, and it looks simple, right? But then you
Right.
start getting that whole like puzzle, the spatial puzzle, and I love spatial puzzles. Or yeah, I love spatial puzzles, but I just love games with puzzles in it that I just have to figure out. Not saying I'm good at them,
Sure.
but I just enjoy that time of just crunchiness trying to figure out a puzzle. So I love the spatial aspect of that. And like, what was your thoughts going forward in all these different areas of Honey Buzz and how then bring it together?
Well, the first, as soon as I had the tile thing and I decided it was bees, I knew that it was going to be like, you have a worker bees. And so worker placement made sense. And I don't even know what kind of worker placement games I had played at that point. I had seen people play Lords of Waterdeep, but I don't know if I had played it or maybe I had. Um, I can't really remember. Oh, I think I had played Energy Empire to that point, and maybe I had played Viticulture even. But originally, the worker placement was kind of more complicated and closer to the way that Manhattan Project works, where there was an area to go get tiles, which was called the Hive Depot,
Okay.
and then there was an area to go take just a single action. So it wasn't as focused on like the action chaining, which is really where the game, lives now and is much
Right.
better. And then there was like, instead of just having to pay extra bees, there were ways that you could pay a bee and points, or pay a bee and more points and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but during development, kind of pretty close to the end, we took out a lot of all of the other worker placement spots and just made it about that tile acquisition. And then the other things kind of filled in terms of how the game was going to work. I knew that the memory and deduction part, which I think a lot of people playing Honey Buzz don't play or don't really know much about the advanced variant. That was just like, we went to a play test one night and I hadn't thought really of a way to draft these nectar tiles, and so I just put them face down and it kind of worked. And then we developed the idea and made it better.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So, and then just, you needed to be able to sell things, so I had these decreasing rewards because it was kind of a race all along.
Right.
But then I also wanted you to be able to sell some honey blends because that was thematic. So at
Right.
one point there was like just 2 honey blends that you could sell each game, and you could could just keep selling that blend and it would reduce in price. But having the order cards kind of give you these swapping out options and like momentary chances to fulfill something and trigger a bonus action, all of that just made the game better incrementally.
Yeah, I love that. You kind of want like specific honey, but then you kind of want the ones that are showing on those contracts because you fulfill that contract that lets you produce honey again, and then you're just potentially just refilling all the spots that you just offloaded, right?
Right.
And so that's really tempting. And then, of course, yeah, you can just sell it straight to the market. So it's got that. I love that whole balance of how much honey should I sell to the market? Because if I sell 3 of one at $5 or $6, that's more than the whatever, you know what I mean? And so it always
Yeah,
has
totally.
this not tug of war, but maybe tug of war in your mind of what's better or what's the
Sure.
best
Like
thing to
weighing
do.
the opportunities. And that too, it's like, well, there's one wildflower nectar left, but I'm going to have to pay this many points to go run over and get it. And so maybe I'll just let that go and I can do something else. And, or even just the tension between, do I want to pay points to go get nectar,
Yeah.
which I can use to sell honey over and over and over? Or should I just make small moves and collect pollen, which I can sell at once for a big pile of points? And
I did that one time and no one caught me. And I think I had you know, I don't know how much it was. It was a ton of
pile.
honey
Yep, yep,
and or sorry, a ton of pollen,
yeah.
and it was just no one caught me. I think I had like 8 of them and I just dropped them for
Yeah.
whatever at the top is at 8 or 7 or whatever it was.
And of course, if people pay attention, then they can sell that and bring that down some and cut points out from under you. But I think it's good in that it's a game, especially in the advanced mode. It's a game that wants you to look at what other people are doing and pay attention to that,
Yeah.
and you can kind of use that to your advantage.
Fall Flavors is the next upcoming expansion to Honey Buzz. What exactly does that bring? I know it brings in something like capping nectar of sorts and just a bunch of different modules, I believe.
Yeah. So again, kind of taking inspiration from what really goes on with birds, like or not birds. I was just watching a video about Phil Walker Harding's new game, which is about birds. That's why I had birds on the brain. Um,
Is that
uh,
planted?
no, that's about plants, as you might imagine. He just
Oh,
released 3 new games on Kickstarter, all about Australian stuff. One's about the Australian birds, and it seems pretty good.
okay,
So
cool.
he's
Sorry.
my favorite designer, so I'm backing all of that.
I was gonna ask who your favorite designer was, but you
Yeah,
already answered, so
yeah, I'll
go
come
ahead.
back. So yeah, doing more research about what bees actually do, uh,
Hmm.
and one of the things that they do is they cap nectar as they prepare for winter. They cap honey and nectar to basically save food.
Hmm.
Um, and they well, a lot of them die eventually as you go towards winter. But one, I have a lot of expansion ideas, and some of them might come out in the future. But we sort of honed in on this fall theme. So we have 5 fall themed modules, or really 4, and then one that kind of ties everything together. The first is in fall, of course. There's beautiful leaves, autumn
Mm.
leaves, and so um, one of the things I tried to do was like find places in the design that weren't being used, and then
Hmm.
put something there. So
Right.
every honeybuzz tile has an icon on one side and nothing on the other side. So some of the tiles now, 6 in each stack, would have an autumn leaf, which is either red, yellow, or purple,
Okay.
and then or it might have 2 of those. And you get those the same normal way, and then you're just basically playing set collection for some end game scoring,
Hmm.
like 10 points for every set of all 3 colors that you have, or whoever has the most of red gets a bonus, or things like this, or adjacencies. That's autumn leaves. Um, the nectar capping, again, 2 of the modules have this theme of like kind of shutting down production as you head towards the end of the season.
Hmm.
So when you activate the accounting action, you can either get 5 coins like you normally would,
Yep.
or you can cap nectar. And that means grabbing a tile and putting it over one of your nectar spaces. It will no longer produce honey ever again,
Mm.
but the caps have a bunch of points on them: 12, 11, 10, 9. They decrease down to 5. So you get those solid points, which is especially good to do at the end of the game, but also whoever caps the most nectar gets a reward.
Okay.
The other mechanism that kind of leans towards the decrease in production is the harvest festival. As the season winds down, the bees, of course, celebrate their successful season. So at the end of every turn, if you want, you can send a worker from your player board to the harvest festival, which is this beautiful new board with kind of a nighttime themed garden party look to it. And you get an option. You lose the worker forever. They're done. They're retired for the season. You never get them back. But
Hmm.
they can either do a bonus action, which is a decree. You can do anything you want, or they can propose a toast. When you propose a toast, there are 6 scoring cards, or depending on player count,
Right.
these scoring cards that you grab one of them and score immediately. And they might say something like 3 points per nectar that you have. And
Hmm.
obviously, the longer you play the game, the more nectar you accumulate, the better that's going to be. But you're also kind of pressing your luck a little bit. Is somebody going to take it before me? Because
Right.
once they're gone, they're gone. So that's the way the Harvest Festival works. And then the other biggest one is the new fall fruits, fall woodland board. So you have a new field of flowers to forage in, which is kind of like, instead of being a square grid, a rectangle grid, it's kind of a hexagon grid. And instead of collecting pollen, there's 3 types of fruit that you can get: apples, pears, and pumpkins. And those can also be sold for flat points: 2 per
Okay.
apple, 3 per pear, 4 per pumpkin. And for every set of all 3 that you sell at the same time, you get bonus points. Great.
Wow.
Like pollen, they can be really lucrative if you can pile them up. Um, but there's also a fourth order stack, which is kind of like honey glazed fruits or honey dipped fruits that want one specific fruit and one specific honey.
Hmm.
And so it kind of widens what you can do in that board, and then also gives it this fall look. And then the fifth module is just you sort of talked about with Century having all of these different game modes and how do you make them work together and stuff. That was very much like going on with all these modules, is how do I make them compatible with each other? How do I make them compatible with the advanced mode or the basic mode? And the sunset module keeps track of the end game trigger, so that um, through a variety of these different modules, the end game will still kind of occur organically.
So it's just like opening this world up like immensely that you can gain points in a plethora of ways. So you can add all these modules, and so you could have someone going, hard on the fruit and things like
Yeah.
that, and you could have other people, just capping all their nectar. And did when you design this, does this stretch out the game? Do you
It doesn't
find?
it doesn't really make the game longer,
Hmm.
um, because turns can get a little longer because you're maybe sending a worker at the end of your turn, extending your turn. But when you do that, you still take actions that progress the game forward.
Right.
So it it kind of overall takes the same amount of time. I think that for AP prone players, if you're playing with all those modules at once, there's a lot more to consider,
Hmm.
because even just the decision of what tile am I going to get is complicated by the fact that somebody went to the new B tile and took the top one, which revealed a leaf that I want. So now I
Mm.
have to pay 2 to go get the leaf that I need. And then where am I going to put it? And am I going to cap this now or later? And then do I send my worker? And now I have an extra order to fulfill. So there's much more to think about if you want to go to that level. My guess is that people will find the 1 or 2 that they love. You'll always probably leave the leaf tiles in, but you may or may not score them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the game still takes about 45 minutes to an hour.
That's like right in my wheelhouse. Like I'm a 30 to 60-minute gamer,
Yeah, me too.
and
Take your turn.
man, I'm like super pumped, and I'm super bummed now that I did not back this on Kickstarter. Like I
Well, this
saw
one
it.
will come out in stores, so don't worry
Okay,
about it.
fantastic. Because when you're explaining all this, and I'm like, oh man, there's just so much meat, not the correct term, because
Yeah,
obviously it's all honey and stuff.
sweet
But
stuff.
pardon?
There's sweet stuff.
There is some sweet stuff that, man, that's fantastic. So, you know, would you say that there is more to Honey Buzz after this as well?
Yeah,
Can you share any of that? Would you share any of that? Or is
sure.
it kind of
We've
tight
sort
lipped?
of said a couple things publicly. One was people during the campaign for Fall Flavors were asking a lot about, storage, as they always do. Will there be a big box to store everything? And we kind of have in our minds one more large expansion, like on that scale that I just sort of talked about,
Hmm.
and then probably a box to put all that in. Um, and I don't know how much I've said about it, and it's really subject to change, but this would be kind of like the direction that we're sort of leaning in is like a business school type of
Mm.
thing where you are gaining powers, sort of training workers, and kind of increasing the complexity of what occurs on your recall workers' turns.
Okay.
But most of that stuff isn't really. Um, there were some prototypes that we had before we decided to go in the fall direction,
Hmm.
but most of that stuff is still very, very subject to change.
Right.
We're also working on some other stuff. Like I'd love to do like a Honey Buzz card game version, which had maybe a lower price point or was even faster setup. Um, and that's a little bit what I'm working on now, on top of some other stuff.
I was going to ask, are you working on other ideas? Like what other ideas? And you may not want to share, and that's fine. And I'll totally respect that. But are you wanting to continue in this whole B universe? Cedar Grove, I think that's what,
Sweetwater Grove.
sorry, Sweetwater Grove.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that kind of like a universe that you're wanting to just rest in for a while and just
Yeah.
see what other things, what other ideas come out of that?
Yeah, and there are going to be some other Sweetwater Grove games kind of in the works. I don't know how much Elf Creek has announced, but I've done some play tests with some of the developers or some of the designers, and um, I'm not in a lot of those games. Those are not my designs, but there's going to be a lot more. For me, I just did a ton of development with Elf Creek on their Santa's Workshop game, which is going to come out.
Mm,
Um, and I think that got to a really cool place and was fun to work on. It's also fun sometimes to work on a game when you're not the designer, and it's just sort of a very different role. You're a little less married to things sometimes.
yeah.
For my own work, like I said, I do want to make another expansion. I do want to make a Honey Buzz card game, but I've got a couple of other ideas that are probably not Sweetwater Grove. I've got a I spent probably an hour today prototyping a coin collecting game,
Hmm.
um, which is kind of hard to describe. The mechanism that I want to incorporate is based on, I don't know if conventions you've ever been to have this, but like it's called the board game table at Geekway to the West, and it's
Okay.
basically like if you want to participate, you bring in a game to
Okay.
give away, any game you whatever. So usually you want to give a good one, and you'll see why in a minute. And then somebody gets the first pick, and they go in and they look at all these games and they take the one that they want, and then whose ever game they took gets the next pick.
Okay.
And so
Hmm.
it's kind of this swapping of games, but you know you can expect that if you put up a bad game, you're going to get a bad game.
Yeah.
And if you put up a good game, so it's kind of almost a blind bidding system,
Hmm.
right? With a strange turn order.
Yeah.
And there's a game that I played a while ago called Coin Quest, which
Okay.
I really liked the ideas in that game, but I thought it was a little underdeveloped and didn't kind of play very well. Um, so I want to do something like that with coin collecting. Originally, it was going to be stamp collecting. I got into stamps for a while for game design, and
Okay.
I have some prototypes for that too. But my idea now is I'd love to see a game that's like the deluxe edition is just like a million different and unique metal coins. I
Oh
think that'd
man,
be a really cool thing.
that would be super cool. Do you find yourself like just ideas upon ideas upon ideas, just like in the middle of the night you wake up and you're like, okay, I gotta write something down, or something
Yeah.
just pops into your head. You'd be like, okay, I gotta make a note on my phone so that I don't forget this, or things like that. Like,
Yeah, I do. I have done a couple of like game designs in my sleep. Like I did I had a whole Rolling Realms realm because I did some play testing and some design stuff for Rolling Realms,
okay,
some of this stuff, and so I had an entire realm like that I dreamt up, and I woke up and I was like, that was a whole there's a whole thing. It was going to be for Fox in the Forest, but that was like I'm not gonna worry about that. And so it happened another time too. But I do. I mean, I have a lot of ideas, and I have a lot of things. Kind of like I've got this hot air balloon mechanism that I think is really cool. I have, it's funny. I just saw a post office. United States Post Service is coming out with a game, or I guess Big Potato Games is coming out
Okay.
with one that licenses the
Wow.
USPS. And but I've had this stamp collecting and also like a mail delivery system game in mind. One Sweetwater Grove game was going to be like, as the economy of Sweetwater Grove and the surrounding areas is sort of growing, the birds of the area
Hmm.
develop a postal service, and so you're you're basically you're delivering things between towns, but you're also collecting the stamps that they're using as postage. And so you have a currency in the game, which is the stamps and stuff coming from different issuing towns,
Yeah.
but then also those currency that you spend to send things become the things that you set collect. And you know ideas are really cheap, and it's usually pretty comfortable to share ideas because they're not really worth anything. I mean, everything in game design and game publishing is execution,
Yeah.
developing those things, making it actually work, making it actually fun. um, so, it's not really that big a deal. I mean, I'm pretty hard on myself sometimes in terms of like, oh, I never really got down to doing this idea. I think that I
Mm.
spend too much time thinking, like playtesting in my head, thinking about how the dynamics should work, what would the elegant thing work, what are the problems, and not enough time just like sitting down and using a 1 inch circle punch to glue punchboard together and make coins. That's what
Yeah.
I do for an hour in a day.
Like, and so just continuing on that, like, at what point where you sat back and you're like, okay, Honey Buzz is complete, in the sense of what I mean by that is I feel that for myself, when I'm making whatever at home, I'll use cooking as an example. Like, I make something, I'm like, man, this is fantastic, and I eat it, and then I'm like, I'm gonna make it again. I do that, and then I meddle with it, and then
Yeah.
I just wreck it. I'm like, man, I
Uh
just, like,
huh.
stop when you're ahead. At what
Uh
point
huh.
were you like, okay, Honey Buzz, like, this is done, it's good, let's just, like, not pack it in, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
at what point did you get to that, knowing that this game is complete?
I think, I think it was hard to get there. Um, I kept going to like the designer meetups in St. Louis and play testing it, and I had friends that were saying like, "I think it's done. I
Hmm.
think this is fine. This is good enough. You can pitch this." I took it to Stonemeyer Design Day and did play tests with it, and people loved it. So I knew that there was something there that was good, but I didn't. I don't think I knew what it would look like done, and I think I knew that I pitched it originally to Jamie Stegmaier, and I knew that if he signed it, that he would make tweaks and changes along the way, and that like I couldn't be married to any art or something. So I expected a lot of change down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then once it was with the publisher, I worked with them a lot, but ultimately there's a point at which they tell you we're done.
Yeah.
That's it. We're here. And that happened this week with that Santa's Workshop game where we just kind of ran out of time, and we were like, well, we wanted to try this change, we want to try that change, and what about this and this and this? And it was like, we're just out of time. Like, we got to have the game come out at Christmas, so
Right.
stop now. And it's okay. I think the truth is that there aren't right answers in the way that it sometimes feels like there are. And I think for me as a math student, as a math thinker, naively I was attracted to the potential that there would be like right answers, and
Mm-hmm.
that if I thought about it well enough, I could avoid being wrong. And it's a little bit of an illusion. And that's kind of what I like about the math art that I've studied and the math that I've studied, is that it's just a very human thing to like, well, I'm going with that because it feels good, because it's right or because I think it's right. And that totally happens in game design where it's
Yeah.
like, you don't know for sure that that's how, you don't know if it should be 8 points and 4 for second or if it should be 20 and 10.
Yeah.
And even if you lock into something, people will disagree. So, 5 years after publication or whatever, 5 years after signing, there's still some things that I think, maybe we should have changed this a little bit. Maybe something should have been slightly tweaked. And when people post on Board Game Geek and say, hey, this is a real problem, I encourage them to change the recipe a little bit. Like you're saying, like, see if you can make it taste a little bit better for you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I'm not there playing it with you. So if you can make it a better experience for you, that's good. You're just making what I did better.
Yeah. And one of my questions was how exactly do you deal with negative reactions or negative criticism? Like, the whole thing is don't read the comments, right? Because
Yep.
people will disagree with everything, right? You see it everywhere, right?
For sure.
And how do you as a game designer not take everything personally?
I think it was harder for me in the beginning. I still read probably every comment that's up on Board Game Geek.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I've looked and some of the stuff, and I have to commend you. Like, you are answering people's questions and giving like reasoning. We did this because this, and I think that's fantastic because it gives you the connection with other people to a reasoning, and it wasn't just like, oh, how many points will this be? Oh, this sounds like a good number. No, like, you put the thought and process into that, and so good on you for that.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people they don't realize what goes on when you make a game, and they have expectations sometimes that are unreasonable, or whatever. And so I try to like let them know, like, this is like you said, this is the reason that we did what we did. Um, and sometimes that makes a difference, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I used to, when people would post negative comments after a demo at a convention or something. Sometimes I would reach out and just be like, hey, I'm really sorry that you had a bad time with the game. I'm the designer. I'd appreciate any feedback that you can give me so I can try to make it better, understand what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. But also, like, we've got a comment on our expansion that's just like 1 out of 10. I'm tired and hungry. When are you going to send my game? Or I'm
Yeah.
tired and angry. Like, that stuff's just silly. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
I had a comment recently that stuck out to me where it was a negative comment, and there was some funny. They were people like to have their hot takes, and they like to be kind of edgy and tell you something's terrible because then they're the cool person that tells you that the cool thing is terrible or whatever.
Yeah.
But the quote that they said was that they were saying it was devoid of theme, which was like inaccurate, but they were saying that it was nihilism and that it's not even fun nihilism, which I thought was hilarious. So I just posted that to my Instagram, stories. And I was grateful that I was in a place where honestly, it didn't bug me. It was like, it was okay.
Yeah.
Because, the game's in the top 100 family games of all time. And so some people are not going to like it. You know what I mean? And the other thing is, like, I'm a math teacher. Like, I love math, and it's not very popular. You know what I mean? Like, I've had a lot of experiences with people telling me that the thing that I love really sucked for them. And so, I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing about the board game hobby is because there are so many games, and there isn't, it's not a one size fits all hobby, and nothing really is. Let's be honest, nothing is. But it just, like, there's games that I love. People are like, that's ridiculous. Why would you ever play that? You know what I mean? And just great that we can just often set our differences aside. Maybe that's not the right word, but like, and just sit and enjoy company of other players and just build community and kind of like what this whole thing started with. The community starts with is built on conversation. And so I just think that's like just a fascinating thing. And This has been just a great time chatting with you and getting to know just more about your passion in Honey Buzz and just your like inner workings of how you brought these ideas to life. And it's just fascinating the creativity that we all have, whether it's in game design or whatever. We're all creative in our own way,
Right.
right? Just some
Yeah.
people show up on a box or artwork
Right.
in a museum or a gallery or whatever, but we all have these gifts that we can just do great things with, right?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things too to tell my students and tell people is like you don't have to do great things anyway. You can just do them. You don't
Mm,
have to be good at something to want to do it. And
yeah,
um, people ask me like, how do you become a game designer? And I try to tell them, you just make a game. And they say, well, how do I make a good game? And I say, don't worry about it. Just
yeah,
make a game first.
yeah,
You don't have to be a great game designer to be a game designer. You don't have to be a great dancer to earn the right to like dance in front of people. You
exactly.
don't have to be a great singer to sing. Like these are fundamental human experiences to like make stuff up and express yourself or like think through a math problem, and you don't have to be good at them to deserve the right to do them. You know what I mean? You don't
Yeah,
have to get your games published to be a successful game designer.
yeah. Very cool. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time. This has just been a blast, and we'll come back to my shirt. It says six
Oh
plus
yeah.
four plus three equals two. And you asked if I'm a baseball fan, and I'm a huge Jays fan. I love baseball, like the whole, just everything. It's the most like board gamey game out of the major four, and this is almost like,
Yeah.
and this is the hill that I will die on probably, because there's just so much about baseball and hitting a ball, a 3-inch ball
Yep.
is like one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing in professional sports. And again, I'm not taking away from hockey
Sure.
or football or basketball. I'm not doing that, but just crazy the amount of everything in baseball. But anyways, position players.
Okay.
Every position has a player, or sorry, every player has a position.
Oh, 6 4 3 double play.
6-4-3 double play. 6 plus 4 plus 3 equals 2 outs. Yeah, exactly.
That's
So yeah, this is like my
I think
super
that
nerdy.
my math was like going too hard where I was like, okay. I'm like, all right, so it's base whatever, and how can I make it work? And yeah, that makes sense.
Every time I wear this shirt out in public, I can just actually like physically see people, like their eyes like starting to like twitch. They're looking at my shirt and they're
Yeah,
like this doesn't make sense at all. And they
yeah,
just
yeah,
stand there or they look at me, they're trying to figure it out. And it's always a fun thing that I can actually then explain it and then share my love of baseball, because it is, yeah, I love it. So
yeah. That,
but thanks so much for taking this time. And you know like I said at the start of this, community is built on conversation and games are built on ideas. My name is Brent. Of course, this is Cloudy with the Chance of Meeples, and find us on Facebook, Cloudy with the Chance of Meeples. If people want to know more about your work, Paul, where can they find your work, if at all?
Probably the best thing to do is follow me on Instagram. I'm Paul Salomon 27 there,
Okay.
and I post about games, I post about my kids, I post about math, I post about art, but anything I'm doing is probably there.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much. My name is Brent. Grab your umbrella. Till next time, the forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.